Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today from Australia. It's really sunny here today. I've been sitting outside. I want to talk to you about the up and down of the grief process. It's not really linear, sort of going forwards and then sort of going backwards, then going backwards and going forwards. Don't be harsh with yourself, okay? It's like this. It's really easy sometimes, and you think, oh, wow, I'm much better now, and I'm doing really well, and you're going out, and you're coping, and then you just hit a wall, and you're back to feeling miserable, really miserable, and you're sitting in your room looking out the window. It's okay. This happens during grief. It's not something that you just get over. It gets better, and I think the pain gets less acute. However, you're going to have times when it really does hit you, and I want you to be kind to yourself during those times and just accept that most people do grief like this. It's a horrible process. It's something you can't get out of. It reminds you of childbirth, actually. Once you're on the train and you decided you're going to have this baby, there's no way back. It's a little bit like that. But you know, you love that person, and the grief you're feeling is the loss of that person, and you really, really miss them. And I found the missing was really interesting, that I just missed these people so much. I really missed them. And in some ways, as it got further along, I kind of missed them more. And I think it's because they really weren't in my life, and I craved to see them or talk to them or have them over for a cup of tea or something, and I couldn't do that in the same way. So you'll actually really miss the person, and the missing goes with the grief. I think they're kind of separate in a way. Missing is different to the grief because people could be alive and we don't see them, we miss them. But then you've got, on top of that, you've also got the grief. You will miss them, you really will, and you'll find probably there's nobody who really replaces them, and that's really something you have to kind of come to terms with. You might have an extra few friends come in, and your family might come in a bit closer for you. However, you will still actually miss them. It's kind of a big hole there, isn't it, where they're not anymore. If you have religious or spiritual belief, you'll know that you will see them again, and that brings some comfort. However, in the real world, in the physical world, they're not here, are they? And you're going to miss them, and that's just as simple as it gets. There's nothing much you can do about when you miss them. I don't think there's a lot you can do. You just have to kind of wear it and think about them. I tend to have a little chat to them myself and have a look at their picture, and sometimes I light a candle for them. You know, there's something wrong with talking to them when you're having a drive in the car on your own. It's okay, because I actually am a firm believer, because of the work I do, that they're just on, sort of like on the other side. There's a veil between us and them, and they hear and see everything we do. To me, it's an easy process. You will sometimes be able to do things for a while and then think you're doing really well now, and then not be able to do them. And that's part of the up and down of grief. It's okay. It's okay. Just go back to it when you can. And if you need to get help during the messy times, just get help. You might have to call for help or see a friend or go back to the doctor or your counsellor. If you want to go and join the grief groups, do that. You can meet people who are in the same position as you, and it won't make you feel like you're so weird or you're not coping, because they're not coping either. And that's why they're at the group. So you can all be not coping, really. But in a sort of a way you are coping, aren't you? Because you're actually trying to find things to make it better for yourself. I kind of didn't really believe the stages in the order they were that they wrote down, the Elizabeth lady. I don't think she actually did it for grief. I think it was for something else and it kind of got misinterpreted. However, I think you'll just go through the stages in your own time. You can be really fine, and then 1 year later you can be in shock in the numb place, or you can not have any anger at all about it. Everyone's really, really different, and you might actually accept it earlier, but you still have feelings around it. Don't feel bad if you're not following the procedure as they write down, because when you go and look up all that grief stuff, they tell you these are the things you go through, and I'm like, oh, I didn't do them in that order exactly. And some of them I didn't even do much, and some of them I think I did more. Don't be harsh around that. That's just a kind of a lead for people, I suppose, to make them feel that it's okay to be angry that they went and left you and died, even though they didn't want to die either. Because it's so really irrational that you would think that. But it'll take the time it takes for you. and you allow yourself to have that time. Don't measure yourself next to other people. If you've got someone else and they're going through it around the same time as you, but they're like going out and partying and having a great life and got new girlfriends or boyfriends, and you're just stuck at home and not thinking that's ever going to happen for you right now, it's okay. You're just on different paths and different personality types too, and also different ways of dealing with our emotions. People deal with their emotions in all different ways. For example, when my husband's mum died, I was pretty upset and I cried and wanted to talk about it. And my husband, he didn't show a lot of emotion except on the funeral day, and he didn't want to talk about it. His way of dealing with the grief was internalising it, and mine was talking about externalising it. So we just had this agreement that I would talk and he didn't have to particularly listen very hard to express myself, and he wouldn't talk and I wouldn't ask any questions, basically, because that was his way of doing it. And you've got to understand that everyone in the family will do it different ways, and you just have to let them grieve in the way that they grieve. It's up and down, okay? It's up and down, and it's all right that it's up and down. It's nice to have a few, I don't know, weeks or months where you sort of feel a bit better. So enjoy those weeks or months, and they tend to get a little bit longer and they get a little bit more. However, if you're hitting anniversaries and Christmas and birthdays and Father's Days and Mother's Days, don't expect to feel good on those days. Just get through them. Just get through them, and however you get through them is how you get through, and that's all you can do, really. There's nothing more you can do. I did this podcast because our society has sort of an expectation that we just go through it and you should be over it now and it's done, and it's like it's 3 years now, but it's not like that when you're actually going through it. The years make no difference, the numbers make no difference. It's where you are in the process, and wherever you are in the process is kind of where you're meant to be. If you get super stuck and you get really depressed and feel suicidal, then you do need to get help, and I know you understand this feeling of you've had enough, it's too hard, then you need to get help. But it doesn't mean you're not coping, it just means that more emotion is coming out, because that's what it is. It's the emotion, it's the loss, it's the grief, the terrible grief and the sadness and the sorrow and the what ifs. What if he'd gone to the doctor earlier? What if they'd picked it up earlier? What if, he hadn't gone in that car? I said to him not to drive tonight, but he went in the car. You're going to have that, and it's very, very normal to feel those feelings in hindsight. Well, they say hindsight's 20/20 vision, and I think that's right. Be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, do it your own way, and don't listen to people who, one, have never been through the process, or two, are nagging you. Just tell them to get off your back, leave you alone, and you'll sort it out, and you'll come to terms with it in your own time. I think once we get to the acceptance, we're sort of getting more close to being able to cope with it. I don't really think time heals. I personally think acceptance heals. Once you really accept that they're not there, once you accept they're not in your life anymore and you won't actually physically see them anymore or speak to them on the phone, once you come to that acceptance, I think that's the biggest part of the healing. And then you do another section of healing after that. But it's to accept it, and at first it's very, very hard to accept, and it's very, very hard to cope with. I hope you have a good week this week. I hope it's not filled with your demons, grief demons I call them. And I hope that you find some happiness in the day. And I'm sending you lots of love and lots of light.